I'd like to acknowledge the tawa te whenua of Aotearoa and pay respects to their ancestors and elders.
Mapping back and seeing what you've actually done. I think the really cool things are just happening now, and we're starting to see wines with such energy and clarity within the whole wider system of how we do things.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Christopher Keys is the winemaker at Gibbston Valley Winery. It is located east of Queenstown in the magnificent Central Otago region of the South Island. With close to 2 decades of experience, I am delighted to have Christopher join me today to tell me more of his story. Kia ora, Christopher.
Kia ora. Hi, Shanteh. How are you?
I'm very well. All the better for having you join me in a very busy time when I'm sure that you should be doing something in the winery, but I'm glad that you've taken a cup of tea or a glass of wine to come and have a chat with me.
Thanks. I've got both, and it's Friday afternoon, so I think that's a good time.
Absolutely. We do have 2 hands for a reason. And as we know, not much would happen if we didn't have coffee in our lives.
You're making a lot of presumptions about what I look like here. I do have 2 hands.
I've seen photos, okay? So unless something has drastically happened in the last couple of months, I'm confident. But tell me a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up, and how did you find your way into the wonderful world of wine?
Sure. Well, I grew up mostly in Hawke's Bay. I was born in Australia and lived in Shepparton for 5.5 years. And then my parents upped and left Australia. I think our dog went to a farm and all those classic stories you get. And we packed up our house and came to Hawke's Bay where Dad grew up. So I essentially grew up in east coast of North Island, Hawke's Bay, and like all people grow up there. It's a great place to visit and do nothing. It's a lot of golf courses, cricket pitches, great Kiwi kind of upbringing, hot summers, ideal wine growing conditions. And I grew up in a family that valued eating, talking over dinner, sharing the news of the day, arguing, doing just normal family stuff. But with that, I think that was the great backdrop for, not steering the device and ignoring each other, but getting into life and food and wine. And that was my childhood and upbringing. So generally pretty happy. And then I went and confused the shit out of myself at university and became wayward and studied literature, Russian language, history, and essentially dived from I think if I look at my background, my strong mother, rationalist background, and I just sort of flipped out at university and did just explorative things, quite a nervous teenager, and just ended up studying art subjects and became fascinated in writing and communication and narrative and that kind of side of trying to understand what life is as a 20-year-old, and ultimately found out I didn't know. There were no easy answers, and I didn't have a job. And I ended up working in a wine store, and that and my dad's love of wine, which was deeply imprinted in me and my kind of cultural upbringing, led me to just want to be I wanted to become a wine writer. And so I worked in wine retail, went to a lot of tastings at a fine wine store in Dunedin as I was completing my degree in Russian literature and uselessness and human condition, misery, and English lit. And then I said, right, I'm near 30 now, I better go and get something. So in 97, I went to Lincoln College just out of Christchurch and did the postgraduate PG viticulture enology, and had a fantastic year where everything was more tangible and felt real and right to me. And I studied wine for, seems terrible to say, but just a year there of postgrad education, and then started off into the industry from that point. So it was a bit of trying to harness all that together as a personal story is quite difficult, because there's lots of tangential missteps, but in the end, I found that wine was a really great discipline to be in, because it incorporates so many angles, and it takes human psychology, science, art, literature, communication, and everything else. It's very tactile, very just a probably an area that you can be in any type of individual and get into. So that's how I got into it, waywardly, in summary.
I love a wayward story. I think, you touched on a few things I was going to ask about, but I do think, when I hear that people have kind of studied history or literature or anything in the arts, it makes you think, okay, here's somebody whose mind works quite creatively, who's interested in the world. And that's certainly a very useful skill to have as you move forward in wine, having to be interested in different places and the history that's come before and what comes after. So I kind of think, in my brain at least, that wayward way of getting into wine kind of works. I'd like to know a little bit about when you were young working in the Dunedin bottle shop. Did you have any memories or stories from that time, maybe when you were asked about a wine and you were learning and you had no idea what the hell somebody was talking about, or did you feel really confident working at the bottle shop? What was your experience like there?
Well, that's a great question. I was terrified working there at first, but I was surrounded by very encouraging people. Peter Munslow was a really big figure in the wine industry and wine judging around then, and he encouraged me to go and watch, attend all the tastings. So I remember vividly the winemakers coming in and their aura, and I was struck by it. Whether that was, sitting there, John Forrest did a tasting, and I remember him explaining how the 1994 Sauvignon Blanc was made, and how that they'd done multiple passes in order to get complexity into the Sauvignon Blanc. And I thought that was just remarkable. Ollie Masters was doing a tasting for Atarangi, and the winemakers, their presentation was struck me. Some people came through. So who's it? Gosh, I should. The winemaker for Wither Hills, the original.
Oh gosh, testing me.
God, this is terrible. Like a New Zealand icon here. Back in the day, and he reminded me of Shane Warne. The type of character that could just come in and hold a room and just be Brett Maris. Is it? Yeah. And he was amazing. And so those are the inspirational people. And so going there and drinking the wine and trying to piece together, as you say, the narrative behind it was the very compelling thing. Early on, I had all the horrors of anyone new to wine. I remember the first time I helped during a tasting. I spilt wine on someone's dress. I smashed the company van and trying to. I was the delivery boy as well, and that van, which was driven around for the next 15 years after I graduated and visited them, it still had the same dents and horrible scrapes in it that I put in the van, someone else's car. And I remember vividly as well, it was a Tomato Estate tasting, and I was told to man the desk downstairs and look after the shop basically while upstairs the tasting was going on. And Peter and Linda, the owners and managers, were kind enough to bring me wine down, and I remember tasting, it was the Elston Chardonnay, and they said, "What's this?" And I smelt it and said, "Oh, it's a Riesling." And I still remember them mocking and laughing and say, "Oh, Junior," he called me up, Peter, "Junior, oh, you'll never make it if you can, of course." An iconic Chardonnay Riesling. So it was really good to expose myself to all sides of the wine industry. Basically you learn a lot in your first year, and then you quickly realize how little you don't know, and the flogging that wine gives you every now and again, reared at an early stage, which is good, but also the thrill of it and the thrill of discovery, the discovery of the new and the unseen. That was the remarkable thing. I think it's still there.
I mean, I love that you've got those on-hand stories, because I just whipped that question out and you were like, oh yeah, let me tell you. But I think it's so great because, after 2 decades now, people that now hear of your name will feel that way. Young people in the industry, when they hear that you made those wines, and it is very much that celebrity status of what you made the wine, as in this bottle here, you made it. Like, it's quite a big deal. And I think it's good to remember that when you have, new winemakers come for vintage, or whether it be people when you walk past the cellar door, people still feel that way about you now. And it's good, I think, to remember that you came from a time where you called Riesling Chardonnay Riesling. And now, hopefully you're not making those same mistakes.
Yeah, hopefully not. And if I do, it's okay. But that's an interesting observation. And it's a really nice thing, actually, to think you can repay as you would have done to yourself 20 years ago or 30 years ago. It's interesting, isn't it? Because you don't look at the world any differently. Well, you become rich in resonance and understanding, I guess, and your value systems change, and you become developed in so many different ways. But essentially, your character and your personalities and your foibles stay the same. So, and you look with the same 2 eyes, and you don't get an understanding of how you age as the world, as you do, and as you see young people come through and work with you and encounter your wine philosophy, I guess, or they expose themselves to wine in your company. It's only last night I was in, I don't know about you, but the insomniac hours of midnight till 3, you probably used to being awake at that time, Shanteh, but these are the hours that more and more people I talk to in the wine industry seem to be staring at the roof at that hour. And I was watching YouTube, and I'm watching, I like diving into World War II history. And there I am looking at the big three, thinking, God, Churchill actually looks my age, and Hitler's looking young there. Stalin's almost like a contemporary, and it's funny, actually, what your awareness of the passing of time, the things that the images and reference points that looked forever old now seem contemporary and even young. Gosh, frightening, but all good.
I definitely am awake at those times. And yes, I agree. It's bizarre kind of how your brain works at those times. But I think, the simple thing of looking in a mirror and not recognizing the lines over your face, or, complaining that your knees hurt. And it's kind of like your body defying what you think it should be doing, and not recognizing that there has been those eons of time. But then when you perhaps do a podcast like this and we rattle off the things you've done in your time, I hope that you recognize that, oh yeah, since that, nervous young teenager, I've done a few things in my time, and I haven't kind of, whiled away the hours just kind of fiddling my thumbs. You've been doing quite a lot. So tell us a little bit about, after that postgrad in 97, kind of where you entered the industry, and a little bit about your experience in Hawke's Bay and the US and France.
Thank you. I just want to say thanks first for that comment. I don't know how long my memory extends to. It's probably every 2 years it renews itself, and I forget everything I've ever done. So looking back, like it was classic Hawke's Bay stuff. Started at Brookfields Vineyards in Hawke's Bay, and that's still owned by Peter Robertson, the Robertson family, and he bought that off in the mid 70s. He used to work for Tom McDonald, one of New Zealand's iconic winemakers. So he had a pedigree dating back to the forefathers in New Zealand modern wine industry. So that was cool. He was his enologist, and Peter had bought this place in between the Ngāraroa and Tutaikuri rivers, just out of Terroir, Brookfields, and he was making Chardonnay. Like, it was a great place to dive into wine because not too big, 10 to 15,000 case winery, and basically got to do everything there, from wine service, cellar door service, restaurant service, to winemaking, like all the processing and all the lab stuff, and then vineyard stuff as well, pruning, tractor work. And taught by, oh gosh, everyone needs a disciplinarian. What do you think? Like old school coach, Justin Langer, makes you run around, sweat things out, do things the old hard way. I think it gives you a really good, I remember I said it to Michael Cooper once, the New Zealand wine writer, and he quoted me in for perpetuity in his atlas, wine atlas of, I think I said something really clumsy like, I learned how not to make mistakes at Brookfields, or some really negative comment, but it was based around, he taught me the importance of treating the product with respect. Would have been a better way to say it now, but basically the value of the wine that you have in front of you. So that was Stern. And then Pete was getting to some Pinot at the time, and just through a side business he was operating. And so I got to, in 99, head off to what I thought was going to be a trip to California through the CAEP winery exchange system that a lot of people went on. And I got rejected from California and accepted into what I thought was Oregon, and I had no idea what Oregon was. Oregon, of course, and I got secured a position through happenstance at Adelsheim, and that was fantastic. Just out of Newburgh, and that's a pioneer Oregon winery established by David Adelsheim, and that was, I guess, prescient. That sort of set me off in rather analogous to Gibbston Valley here, kind of a pioneer winery, and similar varieties. And once I've got immersed into Pinot culture within Oregon, and like most people, it's daft, dumb, asinine to say there was no stopping me at that point. But it was, I guess it opened up a lot of interest outside what had been a fairly, establishment and rational, but deep education in Merlot, Syrah, Bordeaux varieties, Chardonnay. Like Pinot was incredible working in Oregon. So that was that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. No, it was, it was cool. And the first time I'd really gone overseas for a decent length of time, lived with a couple of Austrian guys in a shack, and lived hard, played hard, and opened my eyes up. So repeated that in 03 and 05, Rex Hill and Rob Stewart, R. Stewart and Co. in Oregon. So that was kind of my Oregon link. Loved the place, loved the people, and like many Central Otago winemakers, that affinity to travel was to Oregon, and obviously Burgundy. Like people, that's a really strong and really healthy link, I think, between the two regions. So Oregon became a thing, and then I left Brookfields, went to Cellini, and made Pinot there for 4 years, from 02 to 06, and got more responsibility. Grant Edmonds was the winemaker there, and he was unlike Pete, who was very strong, rational, amazing teacher. Grant was a teacher in a different way. He was phlegmatic, very humorous, more relaxed, but nonetheless, just taught me so much about how to deal with wine perspective, and how to deal with challenges. And I worked at that, and then how to deal with his ridicule, because he hated Pinot, and he's still a staunch Merlot producer in Hawke's Bay, but he gave me a lot of responsibility. I think he probably noticed that I was keen on the stuff and figured that he didn't want to do it. So he let me really take what I'd learned in Oregon and apply it there. And then, and so that was that. And I was, and come 2006, I was newly married. I'd met my first wife in Oregon, and she was working at Chehalem. I was working at Rex Hill, and that love story was flourishing. And Hawke's Bay, was cool for a while, but then she was pretty keen to go back to the States, and I was applying for jobs in California, and then a job came up in Central Otago, and that's kind of the next chapter of this wayward story.
Well, so you won over, and she missed out on going home. Fair enough. Well, with women, you don't always manage to get the win in terms of following what they want. So good for you for for that one. But tell me, I'm so glad that you told us a little bit about Oregon. It's a place I've never been, but I'm such a big fan of. And what a wonderful place to be at Cellini with somebody that didn't particularly have an affiliation for Pinot and be able to do that, because it's an expensive grape to produce. It is often the high prices demanded of it. So there's not many places in the world, I think, that someone would say, you do the Pinot stuff,
Yeah, Hawke's Bay might be that place. Not, and so not naturally known as a Hawke's Bay region, and that was interesting as well. There was a permanent sense of having to prove yourself in Hawke's Bay, and of course, New Zealand's well endowed with Pinot producing regions. Obviously, with Central and Martinborough and Marlborough and North Canterbury, but Hawke's Bay was looked at as a poor cousin, and it's interesting. It's in some ways it was a great learning ground for anyone interested in getting to Pinot, because it teaches you rapidly humility. And when I look, but also it's right on the it's not even on the edge of Pinot acceptability. It's more it's very fragile and very delicate with Pinot. Things that obviously climatically it doesn't lend itself towards the kind of virtues of Pinot that perhaps other areas give. And I don't want to beat around the bush here. It's really back then. I think the zeitgeist within New Zealand is intensity, power, richness. If we think about the early 2000s, it's certainly Central was doing that with the 2002 vintage and the ones that were coming out at the time. And you talk to any of the producers down here, those type of years were suitable for making that type of wine. And the wine styles down here in Central at the time were pushing this region towards being noticed. And part of that was big, deep, rich styles. We were miles away from that in Hawke's Bay, but we wanted it. So there was that kind of that gap that we needed to bridge, and a craving towards producing a style, which is wrong, of course. And in terms of authenticity or understanding what you have or the virtues of what you have and trying to work with that, I was more probably as a factor of being young and such like. Coming back and thinking, well, how do we do this? And what can we add to make that? And how do I replicate that? And if all the interventionist stuff that we were doing generally at that time, that I picked up a lot of tricks and techniques in Oregon, was applying them there and expecting an outcome that didn't really didn't work that way. But it did show the importance or the fragility of Pinot, because one false step and the things, not to put too fine a point on it, would turn into something resembling be that in the vineyard or the winery, if it's overcropped or botrytis set in, or anything like that, you could turn a fragile Pinot into something French onion soup or that kind of look and consistency within not too much time. So it did give me an understanding of the levers, if you like, of some of the metrics of how we might even look and consider the taste profile of what Pinot is. So it was really, really useful in that regard, like from a personal level, working with these people and from a physiochemical, enological perspective.
Very much so. I mean, I think, the whole point of traveling to these different places is to see how they do it there, why they do it that way, pick up techniques, try them yourselves, realize they do or don't work. That is the whole essence of those vintage experiences. And to be able to do it somewhere where, you could make mistakes or you could do a bit of trial and error and not to the detriment of the estate, and have somebody that trusts you that much is pretty amazing. So you over into the Central Otago in 2006. I want to talk a little bit about Gibbston Valley wines, planted by Alan Brady, and in particular, why organics works for you. So give us a bit of an overview of kind of how that job came about and what were your first impressions when you started?
First impressions, I flew down in 2006 to get the job. To go for the job interview. And in that process, I looked at the vineyards and I was just dumbstruck by the quality of the sites and the beauty of them. This is glacial terrace stuff, so I was up in areas I'd never been before, and what I now know is China Terrace and Schoolhouse Vineyards in Bendigo, and overlooking the Dunstan Ranges and through into Wanaka, and just going, oh my gosh, this is remarkable. So the beauty of the place struck me initially, and the taste of the fruit. This is in May, and there was still fruit on the they were picking while I was in there. So we had a pretty sketchy vintage in Hawke's Bay in 2006. So I've been staring at stuff rotting, and came here and just looked at the clarity of it all and went, oh, this is insane. And then second impression was, as we got to the winery, having been the contrast was magnified when I looked at the rather ramshackle place that Gibbston Valley was, where the fermenters were outside, the two DME presses were outside the cave. People were just wandering freely around what was a wine production site, and I was going, where's the roof? And there wasn't one, and so that was a reversal of Hawke's Bay, where there was more of a technological, gleaming stainless steel tanks, tank farm stuff, nice technology, processes. Here it was slightly more chaotic, disparate, diverse, but staggeringly beautiful, and you could see the quality of the raw material. So that was my first impression when I came down here, just how awesome that was.
I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that doesn't get down to kind of Queenstown and up into Central and not be impressed by the magnificence of the mountains and the lake and everything in between. It is such a spectacular part of the world. I hope that there's a roof now, because there's no way you can produce the beautiful wines that I've tasted recently with grapes sitting out in the sun, unless you're a magician.
Yeah, it doesn't rain a lot here. So we have moved, thankfully we've moved in 2016. So I started in 06. So it's 10 years, and we finally moved the winery, removed it from the tourism side where people were on tour. So we used to have galleries watching us as we raised half-ton bins of Chardonnay up into the presses and tipped them in, and to general applause or not if you missed the press. And that was always difficult because you had to look around. Or I remember we're just over staring into some Pinot ferments, and just people wandering up. There's a couple of Chinese guys wandering up, smoking, staring into it. And I was thinking, this is such a crazy work environment where people are free to But no one does that in any other work environment. No one stares over your shoulder at the Excel file that you're changing or what you're writing or what you're doing or gets in your space. You don't wander through the kitchen and say, "What are you cooking there, chef?" That's how Gibbston Valley was. So it was pretty crazy. And now it's, we've definitely got a mostly roofed area. Our fermenters is still exposed to the outside, which is a really interesting development. You mentioned organics before, and within that kind of ecosystem hegemony or like overarching philosophy, and particularly when I look back at Oregon and my Salini days, was chucking dry ice to try and cool stuff down and adding enzyme, adding sulfur, and now we have a far more relaxed fermentation structure. So all our Pinot ferments are in 5-ton open tops, which are outside still, and they're largely ambient. We have no temperature control, so part of the construct of the wine is what's going on outside, and we don't let it go out of hand one way or the other. So it sits within normal temperature confines, but it's quite cool because the development of the wine follows the season. If you're not, so we can't lock in a temperature like a fermentation graph and a temperature graph. We can't preload that in at all. So we're miles away from that, which I find really nice. So it's not preloading your expectation onto the wine itself. It's actually allowing the wine to be itself in a very overarching derivatives, not the predestined kind of a way. So it's a little bit of a thrill. We've worked out kind of what ambient temperature, what mass is ideal for the ferments themselves, and let things go. So the winery as it is right now is a blend of rather functional, kind of small, almost cute design of fruit coming in and out of the presses without a crowd, really neat, and then which I like, and far more efficient than what it was, and then like 50 open tops that are exposed to the elements and part of this wider environment. So it's quite cool.
I mean, 2 decades is a long time to spend at a place, and you would have seen when you've spent something, a significant time like that, it changes you, I think, and it will always forever be a big part of the makeup of who you are. But we talked about that kind of organics and cool climate. I mean, Gibson was one of the founding regions of Central Otago, and it is cooler, sometimes wetter out there. Tell me, in terms of working with organics, what are the most significant kind of disease pressures or challenges within the region? And what makes Gibson so delicious in the glass, do you think?
Well, just on the organics, I think that's it's just one of a number of things that there's so much talk about it, and organics works within it's just within a broader approach to everything. So some people say it's just a denial of, like it's a rules-based system of that dictates what you're not allowed to do. But I think it's tied into observation and a general, I guess, respect for what you're doing and an overall consideration. So you're forced to look, you're forced to be more authentically aware of what's going on around you, and that's why I like it. So I think it's worked well here. The biggest challenges, I guess, it forces you to look at disease pressure would be powdery mildew. That's just something that, but I don't know if that's linked or related directly to organics. And I think at least you become aware of what your site challenges are once you start. There's no hiding, there's no cushioning, there's no nothing. Like that process of listening to your vineyard as it's called, or like that conversation with your site, or that the deep affinity to land and your ecosystem in general, I think starts with a question of what are you doing, land? And what are we doing, and how are we going to get on? 3 questions. And organics for me is a good way to go about that. So you can see certain areas. So it's revealed to us in our schoolhouse, for example, that we've got a thick calcite pan from about 600 mils down in the soil. It's very steep vineyard. The topography is challenging. There's a lot of erosion potential there, and so it's tough on the vines. And as soon as we convert it to organics, I think that nice cozy chair of the interrelationship between soil and vine and environment in certain areas where it was exposed, where the soil is deeper, the canopy growth is as you might expect. Where it's not, we have to look at, observe, understand why, dig, see, and react. And with that, we've changed training systems, pruning systems from VSP to single geo, now just a single cane approach, and changed our expectation level and seen the result. And I think that's the cool thing at the end, as you go through it all. You mentioned this earlier, mapping back and seeing what you've actually done. I think the really cool things are just happening now, and we're starting to see wines with such energy and clarity within the whole wider system of how we do things. There's kind of a logic. It's taken 20 years. When you say 20, you should have a mocking tone. As you say, you've been at this job for 20 years, and I think it's taking Sasha, who I work with, Sasha Herbert and myself, we've worked together in the wine team that long to really start to say, wow, this is pretty cool now. And that's it's interesting. I don't know how many other jobs does it take that. What's the longest stint you've put into a particular job or position?
12 years at one restaurant, which is quite.
That's a good stretch.
11 a bit, which is pretty good. But I totally agree with you. It's a long time, and that is farming, I suppose, at the end of the day, isn't it? It is the long haul, and it's big visions that takes time, because you're working with the elements and you're working with land and this amazing natural resource. But the wine that I recently tried was the Glenlee 22, which is a wine that really had me thinking, and it kind of was one of those wines where I was like, whoa, it just had this other layer of this beautiful little plump blue fruit that I saw that I haven't seen in a lot of the other Gibbston Valley wines. And I just thought, wow, where's this coming from? And then I thought, it also had this incredible firm tannins, but they were really powdery. And it gave this wine this beautiful structure, but this kind of slinky attractiveness that I just thought, wow. And I love that when a wine pulls you in with its aroma and its flavor, and then you kind of try to piece it together of, okay, where's this grown? How old are the vines? What's happening to make up all of the facets, so you can really kind of wrap your head around it. And for a wine to do that, to pull you in, to stop you in your tracks and kind of go, I want to know more about that, is exactly what I think great wines do.
Thank you again for that observation, and sensitive appraisal. Yeah, well, so many of the words you said are exactly what we talk about here, which is the contemplative and engaging aspect of wine. And if it doesn't do that, if it's hedonistically driven to the point where everything's given all at once, well, yeah, great, you've got a beverage, but something that then that first gives you that aromatic interest, and then unfolds in a way that lends itself to contemplation or thought, or be that spatial or tactile or even contemplative in terms of geology or even mood or life or a value system. That's where I'm at with wine at the moment. It doesn't mean I understand it in any more or in a profound way, but I just like those questioning tones when you come to a wine and some you know it when it's not there. And I think it's easy to unpack something that's cynically put together, but when you get to a wine which does force those, not force, but invite you to take that pathway, I think it's pretty cool. And yeah.
Totally. It's just like it draws you in further into the world of wine. And like we say, it's a very deep pool where there is no bottom. So it's not like you get to this place of enlightenment and understand everything. But that is the beauty, I think, of not sometimes, just giving up and kind of understanding that you're never going to understand it. And there is a mystery there, and letting go a little bit is part of what I love about wine. I can be a bit OCD about some things, and I love that sometimes I just go, I don't know why that looks like that, and that's from the same place, and it's this, but it's completely different. So beautiful wine, and I really, really enjoyed it. I'm starting to run out of time, and I've got like at least 10 more questions that I wanted to ask you. So we're going to have another chat at another time. I want to know, to kind of wrap my head around your palate, if you could only drink 3 beverages for the rest of your life, what would they be and why? In rapid fire.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to do Japanese beer because I like the crisp. It's very refreshing. I'm going to go Chardonnay of all sorts. Probably for the same answer, but it's so much more giving. And should I say water? Because I want to stay alive.
No, that's allowed. That's a given. You have to have a third. I'm not letting you off the hook.
I like the notion of life, death, and the in between. So it has to be Pinot. I'm going to go there for the contemplative aspect.
Perfect. I'm glad you said that. I mean, Gibbston Valley does traditional method sparkling. You do some rosé. You guys kind of do it all. It's a very special place in the world. I am glad that they've managed to keep you for 20 years, and I hope that continues on, because what you're doing there with the entire team is really crafting some sensational wines that really speak of place and really connect you to Gibbston, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you so much, Christopher, for spending some time with me. I've had a bloody blast getting to know you a bit better, and I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. I'm sorry I went on too long about the past, but no, there's so much more in the present and the future, and I'm excited to be part of the podcast, and thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Cheers to you.
Thanks.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram at overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.